So, hey, that's Julie Nathanson right there, everybody. That's
where?
Right there.
What
She's
the crap?
in all her glory. Huh?
Is this my glory?
Yeah, this is your glory. I mean, you got
it's so good to know.
Yeah, you got a cartoon behind you.
I do. Awkward Yeti. This is the Awkward Yeti. This is a particular frame that I love. It is a brain sitting exhausted on the ground saying to heart, "You never give up, do you? You never give up, do you?" And heart, who's just flitting by chasing a butterfly, "No way, there's always something worth chasing." I kind of feel like that ought to encapsulate me.
Of course. This is the interesting thing I have found too, because you're a doctor.
Am I?
Well, you're not a...
No, I am an MFT.
MFT.
I'm an MFT.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah. I mean, do you get doctor in front of your name? Do you get the...
No, I do not.
You do not?
No,
okay.
I did not go for the doctorate. No,
Okay.
I have a master's in clinical psychology.
But you don't need the doctorate to be able to practice, to be able to...
Correct.
Okay. So, all right.
Correct.
So,
and that's all I wanted. I wanted to know more about psychology. I wanted to sort of dive into something that had always been a passion of mine, despite the fact that I was already in the entertainment business and lucky enough to be working. And I just wanted to be able to connect with people in talk format. The doctor thing, I found that I was attracted to it after I got my master's. I found myself looking up, UCLA has a really wonderful program on cognitive neuroscience, and I have a real interest in the connection between brain and heart.
Right.
See how we tie things together? But I found that I was looking at the classes, and I was like, I don't want to take that one. I want to take that, not this one. And I thought, why do I want this? Oh, it's ego. I want to be Dr. Julie. Oh, that's a terrible reason to do this. So I dropped it and just started reading more books on cognitive neuroscience.
Well, I'm glad you passed that character test, because that's
right.
That's not what you want sitting in the chair across the desk from you, helping you figure out your own issues, is somebody who's still wrestling that ego.
Wrestling ego. Yeah. I have to say that's been a really interesting piece for me, is getting away from trying to sort of adopt the style and iconic way of something, as opposed to just being me. And that's across the board. That's in psychology, that's in voice acting, that's as a human person. You know, I've been an animated person for my entire life. I've always had a huge amount of energy. I think in my high school yearbook, I was most likely to be turning cartwheels in the parking lot. I've always had so much energy, and it used to be that I was mistaken for being false. And so I would try to kind of be a little bit more contained. And that was false for me.
Right.
You know, I genuinely feel passionate about so many things, and I'd rather really be out there. So authenticity is really more my key. So if I had allowed myself to fall prey to the siren ego and move into the doctoral program because I wanted to be so smart. You know, both of my parents, my dad was a practicing psychiatrist for 50 years.
Oh, wow.
My mom is still a practicing psychologist. I know you have an uncle who's a psychologist.
Yes, good memory.
Yeah. So that doctor thing was like, oh, that sounds really cool. Everybody else is doctor in the family. I can do that. But I don't know. It's not for me. And also I have a whole other world, which is an entertainment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my uncle stopped at master's. That was enough. And he realized that, and it's funny, he's a psychologist, but he was trained by a psychiatrist. And these are fields that sometimes have different takes on things, because psychiatry will sometimes get into the pharmacological ways to address something, and psychology might sometimes veer away from that. My take on it is the individual needs an individual approach. And so, you know, it's going to work for some people, won't work for the other. And man, we are learning so many interesting things about the brain every day.
Every day.
Every day.
Yeah. And I can't get my hands on the new stuff fast enough. And I'm like, I'm the person who will be like, oh, that's interesting. Dan Siegel just wrote something new about how, you know, attachment theory matches up with mindfulness. And hold on, let me look at the brain SPECT scan, and look at brain scan.
Yeah.
Nerd.
No. I have a real interest in this as well. I read something, and I cannot cite references because I have to use that terminology with you because you're an academic.
Oh, right.
You got to have references. Hey, I need
Let
peer
me push
review
up my
research.
invisible glasses.
Yeah. But there was an article, and I'm sure it's controversial, and it's going to take years before they suss this out. But they're beginning to wonder, at least these researchers, if you should not classify certain disorders as things that are not disorders, as things that are classified as perhaps more features of environment. And I cannot name all the things they were talking about, but they were saying it's possible that if we cannot get enough research to prove that these are genetically inherited, then perhaps we should start changing the way we address them. They still all need treatment, whatever these things are, but it might change the patient's mind as to how they approach their own sense of self. If a person believes that they are afflicted with a disorder, they may feel like, well, I'll never get better than here. If a person believes that it's perhaps something that they can manage more than they realize because it is not pathological, but more environmental or more learned behavior from childhood, perhaps they have more confidence in their ability to manage it and might get better results. And again, this is nothing that has been settled within the community, but the article discussed the possibility. So I don't know if you've come across that article because judging by your expression, you have not read it yet.
I have not read it yet. I'm processing what either you mean or the article means, right? Because they could be different things. It could be your interpretation versus whatever the research is saying. My interpretation of that is how we phrase and frame a diagnostic picture can affect how someone experiences their treatment and they're moving toward feeling better. So I can't really speak, articulately about something I haven't read.
Right.
But I guess my personal philosophy is, I've struggled with anxiety in my life. I work with anxiety, and I feel like if we frame someone as like, well, this is an anxious person.
Yeah.
Right. This person, or here's a person with, this is a generalized anxiety disorder person. Right. Then you're asking that person to be identified through their pathology, which is really not who we are. And Western medicine asks us to do that. I think diagnostics are really useful in terms of treatment planning and in framing what we know works. So I'm not someone who would shy away from an awareness of a diagnosis, but I also don't believe any of us is identified by a label of any kind, as evidenced by the fact that I do several things for a living because I love them all and would rather be a whole integrated person than be defined by one or another, skill, hobby, habit, occupation, behavior.
Right. Yeah. Like, for example, and I agree, and I think you actually framed it very well. Just based on the limited information I gave you, I think you got to the heart of what the article was talking about, which is a diagnosis is important because there's going to need to be treatment. The person is in your office for a reason because whatever they're trying is not working. But how you frame their situation is extremely important. And if you hit them with a diagnosis that makes them think, well, geez, I guess I got this and there's nothing I can do about it, I'm just going to have to manage it, it might give them more sense of self-control, more sense of empowerment to believe that, I don't have to be defined by this. This is simply,
I mean, I think it's also, it has to do with your own belief. If you're the therapist in the room, there are some diagnoses, that are seen as intractable. More personality disorders can be seen as like, oh, so constant. I mean, there's evidence everywhere that people are able to shift depending on, the work they're willing to do, treatment, therapeutic relationship, mindset, emotional intelligence, and all of these factors come together. So I think I think we all can do that.
Oh yeah.
If I look at you and I just say, well, there's ChrisEdgerly, voice actor. Okay, well, now I've labeled you as voice actor. I've just ignored comedian. I've just ignored, obviously, streamer. I've ignored father, husband. I've ignored, avid reader, curious person,
right?
Connector, all the things that you are.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, making sure we're giving room for people to be whole
Yes.
is what I'm interested in, regardless of the context.
Yes.
I think we do too much oversimplification when it comes to not just judging people, but feeling that we've identified who they are
Yes.
in our lives, who they are on their own.
Yes. When I did cognitive behavioral therapy, and this was over 15 years ago, it's when I started it. And it was about 4 years I spent working at it. But the last year and a half, I was going in once a month. I was checking in. And he was making sure that I wasn't going off the rails. He was just making sure I stayed on course. But, and I used to refer to him, his name is Dr. Gary Applegate, and may he rest in peace because he passed away a few years ago. But,
sorry, Chris.
yeah, well, I was sad. I hadn't talked to him in years.
Of course
but
you were.
when a person helps you pivot, when they give you the tools to change your life, you're sad,
I'm really sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. But I used to refer to him as my wise friend because when you say, well, my therapist, people immediately, they get a little tense. They think, oh, well, not in Hollywood because we're all used to everyone going to a therapist. But just in general, a lot of people think, what's wrong with this guy? What's wrong with him? But as we've begun to get a handle on mental health and what it means to see a therapist, it's the same thing as, hey, my arm was broken. I had to see an orthopedic surgeon. I had to see someone because something was broken. It needed to get fixed. But what Dr. Applegate taught me was, in reference to what you were saying, people like easy. 90% of the people out there don't want to learn the things I'm teaching you because it's hard work to change the way you think. It's extremely hard work, but you can do it.
Yep.
But if a person can label you and go back to what they were doing, they'll do it because they've got so many other things fighting for room in their minds. And it's important that we learn that, yes, you are what you do. You're not just one thing. We do many, many things. People have many, many facets. And it might be easy to just say, Julie Nathanson, voice actress. Well, of course you're a voice actress. I met you at my agency. We're at the same agency still. But
we used to sit on the marble floor together for hours at a time.
Yes, absolutely. But the reason why I started talking about other stuff is because people are going to Google you and they're going to see, oh, well, she was in this and this and this. And we'll get into all that. But you've got this other facet to you, one of many. And I think it's great that, not at all. I think it's great that people see that because we tend to think, oh, I saw that person on this thing or I heard them in this thing. And so I guess that's their life, huh? No.
Well, it's interesting. You were talking about the preconceived notions people have about therapy.
Yeah.
So I have to own the fact that my preconceived notions about therapy are as follows. This is what I was taught as a child, right? Wash your face, brush your teeth, talk to the nice man in the tie. Like, for me, therapy was just a thing you did. It's part of self-care. It was practically like a basic need. So, at my mom's house, my mom and stepdad, my stepdad does something different. He was a transportation engineer before he retired. And my mom, a practicing psychologist whose practice was in the home. My father, a psychiatrist and also an author, with my stepmom, who's a real estate agent. Everybody, so many different things happening in my family.
Right.
But the constant was that therapy is normal. Therapy is just what you do when you have to go through some stuff and process and figure out how you can feel better or, get a handle on how you want to handle a problem or yourself or your psychology, emotional state, relationships. And my father was a theorist as well, and he lectured all over the world. He wrote many, many books.
Wow.
And when I want to say I was 14 when he started writing his first book, The Many Faces of Shame. And he would finish a chapter and he'd be like, I finished another chapter, and he would throw it on my bed and he'd be like, go read that and proofread it for me. So at like 14, 15 years old, I was, I was an unpaid editor, let's face it, but I read the entire thing and I actually gave him proofreading notes. And so I was like indoctrinated to this way of thinking, right? At such an early age. And so to me, it's so normal. And I have to really own that and remember that it's not normal for everyone. To me,
No.
I feel like, man, I've been in and out of therapy since I was 11, and there's no way I would be whoever I am right now without that work.
Yeah. Well, geez, the shorthand you must have been picking up at 14. You know, you go
Oh
back
my
to your
God.
dad's office. Hey, Dad, a little too Freudian. All right. How about a little more Jungian? A little less Freud. Okay. Yeah, come on. Let's not hack it up. All right.
I mean, I remember at the dinner table, my father talking, and he was like, listen, I understand that, you know, the phrase borderline, Julie, you know, borderline personality disorder was actually coined by Otto Kernberg. And what he was trying to say is there's a split. And I'm like, somebody pass the mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
Like,
I met a nice boy today. I'm nervous to talk to him. I'm borderline nervous. Is that getting... How about that?
I know. So, you know, I come by all of this honestly, you know.
Well, I at least had the benefit because people would ask me later. Sometimes I would just volunteer it. I would say, hey, look, everybody likely needs therapy. One of the few people in my life I've ever met that I thought needed the least amount of therapy is my wife. And even she is not perfect. Even she has little stumbling blocks, but people don't realize when they're making, my uncle once said, you don't know what you don't know. And that's the biggest danger. They don't realize when they're making a mistake. It might feel emotionally satisfying in that moment, but it's a mistake. But you won't learn it until later when you look back at that path and see all the detritus and realize, those were people I hurt. Those were opportunities I wasted because I went for something emotionally satisfying. But it didn't answer the question of why I did it. And so I learned that not only is therapy important, I would hope that in the zeitgeist there continues to be a deconstruction of this sort of, what's the word for it? The stigma that's been attached to it. And that people understand what it is. It's, in fact, to be mentally ill, people think where they're in a straitjacket or they're having to be detained against their will. To be mentally ill can just be in a state where you're not functioning well because of issues you're having. And it's something that you can heal from. So,
willingness to get support and finding the right support is frankly brave. And the stigma is that it's weak. You know, the stigma has always been it's weak to ask for help. And I have to tell you that my personal stance, and I can't imagine that this doesn't come from my upbringing, is that I personally value curiosity and introspection so much more highly than I will ever value someone who knows everything. Right. And anybody who's willing to say, hey, I don't know what this is. Let's look it up. I'm like, you're amazing. Let's have coffee. Like, I love that. I happen to be a curious person. I value it in other people. I'm uncomfortable with the know-it-all philosophy. I say to my kid, I mean, he was so young when I started. He said, I know. And I said, I want to tell you something really important. I said, the people who know more, if you want to know more, are the people who are willing to say, I don't know. I said, if you say, I know, no one's going to give you the new information. And you won't keep accruing more. But if you are willing and brave enough to say, I don't know, and I'm curious, there's nothing you can't learn. And he was like, and then we had coffee. It was great. Don't worry about it.
Of course. He was amped up a little bit for the rest of the day.
He was super amped up, Chris. Yeah, it's good. Good parenting. It's good. I'm a model as parents go.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, I have found that one of the things that I'm really glad I waited to do was to become a father and a husband because the choice, one of the things I do in the morning, this is a Tony Robbins thing. And Tony Robbins can be a controversial guy. He's got his own issues. But Tony Robbins does understand cognitive psychology very well. He understands how you can change the way you think just through sheer determination and hard work and repetition and building habits. So one thing I like to do in the morning is I start off with a nice stretch and I do gratitudes because you can't be anxious if you're busy being appreciative. So it's important for me to think about the things that I'm thankful for in my life. But what I really work on is I work on the things that I'm thankful for that I know I had a hand in putting in my life. So at the same time, I begin to feel confident in myself because I realize I'm thankful for my wife. Now, she chose to be with me, but I'm the one who walked across that courtyard at the Getty and started a conversation with her because I just had to meet her. I'm the one that stuck it out when I had doubts about whether or not she should be the woman I marry because I realized this is going to be the right thing to do. My kids, I'm thankful for because we made the decision to have kids. We made the decision to do these things, but my point is I'm glad I waited because having a wife that is the best person I know and having kids that I want to raise to be wonderful people and good citizens means I have to be those things. And I don't believe I was capable of the kind of discipline it takes to screw up, admit it, work on it, and be better the next day that you must be for your partner and for your children. If I had tried that at 30, oh man, I don't even want to think about the mistakes I would have made.
I mean, there's something to, I remember going through, we can all look at this, like breakups and like sobbing my face off and thinking this was supposed to be my life. Mm-hmm. And then you sort of go into the next frame and the next stage and look back. I've had that, and say, well, I'm happy where I am now, whatever the next now is. I've had that with, projects that I've worked on and they've, something gets canceled or something changes and I'm upset. And then, oh, well, actually that left room in my schedule for this other thing that has now opened up something beautiful in my life. And it doesn't always work out to be so shiny and sparkly.
No.
I always try to, I guess I'm always trying to offer a little realism along with, I'm to say like I'm known as being a sparkly person sounds like much more ego than I mean, but I know that I am very face forward with looking for light and finding the things that we can be grateful for. I don't think optimism is the right word for it. There's kind of like a falseness to everything's going to be fine, which is never what I mean. It's okay. This is a tough time where here we are talking in pandemic times, right? Here we are, right? This is a tough time. So if I were to say everything's great, that's bullshit. And also like it's false, it's inappropriate, it's even a space of denial is a place of privilege, which creates a whole different conversation, right? But I'd rather say like, okay, this is a tough time, here's where my empathy goes, right? I am feeling for the people who are having X, Y, and Z happen. Okay, how can I be helpful? How can I connect? What can I do? Okay, and I feel grateful for these other things that are happening in my life. Oh no, I feel guilty now that there are good things. Okay, well, hold on. What do I do with that?
Right.
So I like to kind of look at the full scope. And my belief is that we have to give ourselves permission in tough times to laugh, to smile, to love, to connect, to remember the things that bring us joy, because those are the things that will fuel us to thrive during tough times. If it's just sort of a statement, everything is great, it's so false and won't help you move through the tough stuff.
Right.
So that balance, I think, is at least for me, the one to strike.
Oh, sure. And I think people we're such consumers of media and memes and tweets and things like that. And so many of them are launched with good intentions. They're trying to be positive, but if you tend to consume only one thing and the algorithm will steer you towards consuming the same thing, before you know it, you're in a bubble, you're skewed out of reality and away from proper context. And people sometimes forget that when you're sad, unless you can identify a kind of an inauthentic reason to be sad, then you should just be sad. You should allow yourself to feel sad. It's not going to crush you. You can come back from it. I found that what my therapist taught me was, he said, you know what, Chris, your life is going to change when you realize that bad things happen and you're going to be okay because you're learning how to create positive emotions on your own in ways that you can control. And once you understand that, when it's time to be sad, you won't run from it. When it's time to feel frustrated, when it's time to feel angry about something, you'll allow yourself that time to feel it, but it'll be an appropriate amount of time. And then you'll say, all right, let me get back to work. Let me get back to creating positive emotions, because the purpose of your life is not to sit around and let things happen to you. Mm-hmm. I just don't think that we'd be given a body and a mind, our tools for getting through life, without the will to use them. And
well, I think that also speaks to your particular method of citing and noting gratitude, right? Because your gratitude, what you said in terms of your morning ritual is that you not only will allow yourself to identify things for which you're grateful, you identify things for which you're grateful, and tie your own agency to it.
Yes.
What did I do? How did that happen? And that's an empowering stance.
Yes.
And just which I think is lovely, especially if something you personally need to work on is remembering that you've had agency. And for others, the journey might be different. I was just thinking about the article that you cited. Send it to me because I'm curious. But, there are people for whom, the psychopharmacological, methods will actually be the most effective. And there are people for whom maybe a combination of that and some other work will be useful. Some people won't need it. But the idea that we all subscribe to the same, ideology is one thing, but like way to be happier, way to feel better is another falsehood of sweeping gestures. We can all just do this and we'll be okay. And I'm not saying that's what you were saying. I was thinking that, like, yes, it is important to let yourself feel sad when you're sad. To me, it's important to acknowledge the sadness. Yeah. Sometimes we're angry, and anger is usually a secondary emotion. So like, okay, well, what's under that? Oh, I feel hurt. I feel sad. I feel insulted. I feel lonely. And then once you know what that is, you can work to soothe it. You can work to process it. And so for others, if someone is really deep into a dark spell of depression, then while it's important to be able to feel that sadness, if there's no other work being done, then focusing on the sadness, then that can also get etched and forged in neural pathways, and you're kind of needing to find ways of forging new paths. Oh, yes. So I think, there's a, sorry to interrupt there. I just, the necessity of a unique perspective on each person just keeps coming back to me. We cannot keep making generalizations about what everybody needs. Right.
Well, in fact, when I said, I realized this, I thought of this too. When I said, let yourself be sad, I thought, unless you have a history of manic depression, in which case, okay, this is going to be a different situation for me, because if a person is a depressive and they begin ruminating, then it's really hard, because like you said, the neural pathways, it's one thing I learned too, is that one thing Applegate taught me was, he said, neural pathways are very important. You're in your 30s. I was talking to him when I was in my 30s. He said, you've had about 30 years of carving out a 16-lane superhighway of neural pathways. All right. This is how you think and process the world. I'm helping you dig one little dirt road to try and reroute some of those synapses. And it's going to take a long time before you can reroute all that traffic. And one thing I had a habit of doing back then was I was ruminating. I was thinking, oh, well, I'm anxious. So why am I anxious? And I try and solve it. And he said, no, you just got to get off the couch. All right. In your particular case, you need to find a better use for your mental energy.
That's also the behavioral part of his CogB work, right? It's like, okay, modify the behavior, get up and do something else. It's all, I mean, you and I have been talking about psychology together for 18 years. I mean, remember, really for 18 years.
And I remember you telling me, you said, hatred, anger is not a primary emotion. Love and fear are like your two primary emotions, I believe. Is that still something that you hold to, or was that something you were experimenting with at the time?
It's funny. I don't even remember saying it.
I remember you saying,
interesting. Anger is a secondary emotion usually, right? It's a reaction to another feeling. Yeah. My father's work really focused on affect theory, shame, and the nature of emotion. And there are some emotional states that are more innate than others, and others are more reactive. You know, you can see a baby, you know, connecting and having affective resonance with a parent. You can have that sort of mirrored experience. But I think connection and love that's pretty primary. Fear is certainly the amygdala will tell you any day of the week that you know the fear is going to hang out in the amygdala and kind of ask you if you're going to do fight or flight.
Right.
I'd have to think about that. I haven't heard that said back to me in a while. I hope to see what I think of Nathanson's statement of days of yore.
Well, you know what? I took that one for a ride around the block, and I thought that makes sense to me, because if a person's angry, usually, and this is one thing Applegate taught me, he says, every fear you have can be traced down to one basic idea, that you'll be in a situation that you think you can't handle. That's a fear. And if you learn that there are certain things you can handle and other things you just shouldn't think about because they're beyond your control, you'll learn to deal with fear better. A lot of people who are angry, you peel back that layer and you realize they're afraid they're going to be put in a situation that they don't understand, don't control. How do they respond? I don't know. As a kid, maybe they were just taught to react with anger. Or maybe
you learned so much from Applegate.
Oh, God, yeah.
You learned so much from him. I'm so glad you had him in your life.
He told me, he said, hey, Chris, do me a favor. Tell this to other people. It'll save me time. And when you teach others, it helps you learn. So when I'm like a hedgehog, it'll take me a long time to learn something. But when I learn it, by God, it's in there. So I know one thing, but I know it well.
Well, I've learned more about hedgehogs today than I knew before. So really, we're all learning, Chris.
Yes. Well, this is only my opinion, and it really is. As to your point, everyone is going to have a different approach to making sure that they're getting the best out of their lives. But to me, all good philosophy and all good therapy boils down to a riff on the Serenity Prayer. And I'm not religious, but the basic Serenity Prayer being, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the strength to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So if you can live, if there was only one idea I could impart to someone, it is practice every day, identifying what's in your control. Focus on that stuff and learn how to spot the things that are not in your control. And if you feel like you need more strength, more courage to be able to deal with those things, then start small, give yourself little tiny challenges every day. And the more challenges you meet, the more you feel courage, the more confident you feel, the more you're going to take on. And as I've learned, think, do, and then you'll feel better. You can't just think your way to feeling better. You got to get off the couch and do it.
That's why Alfred Adler's work always interested me the most. And he's super old school. Dude was working in the 1930s and he was so ahead of his time. But it's like the concept of moving insight into action. And
yes.
I'm very cognitive and very, empathic and connection oriented. So I can really get lost in like, let's figure this out. Let's find a pattern. Let's understand something.
That's what I do.
But it has to move into action.
Yes.
And so it's once you really have a handle on insight, how can you move to action? Which is why for me, I really resonate with your respect for the Serenity Prayer. And I think there's a lot that we can do to enjoy what that Serenity Prayer can offer us, religious or not religious, right?
Oh, sure.
Acceptance and looking at where we have power and
right.
And being able to spot that difference. I also think that empathy is really a cornerstone, and that without it, I think we can get lost. There's and to me, there's a difference between empathy and deep empathy.
Okay.
Empathy is, to me, empathy is imagining yourself in someone else's situation. To me, and that's huge and very useful, and we're looking to connect. The depth, however, also comes from imagining not just that it's me with my background and my experience, right? But actually having had that person's life experience and then going through it. And if we don't take that extra step, then it's all filtered through the lens, right? So my lens is, I grew up on the East Coast. I have an academic family. I learned the following things. I went to these schools. So I'm going to have empathy for this person who is completely struggling and has not had the same education and is, feeling horrible and struggling with things I've never struggled with, but I'm going to take my life experience and put that in this person's world. That's not quite right.
Right.
I need to now imagine what that person went through to get to where he or she is today, or they. And to me, that brings it back to acting. Because if you just put ChrisEdgerly into each character's position, then each character is coming from just your life experience.
Right.
If you dive into that character's history and allow it to be true for you, then that's going to be a more connected performance. Works the same interpersonally.
Yes. This is why I think actors very often, or just artists in general, people in touch with, for lack of a better phrase, people in touch with their feelings. People in touch with how they're feeling about something. Yeah, I know. It's so overused, but it is.
I like it.
Yeah. Well, I guess I should expand on that. People in touch with their thoughts and their feelings, because your feelings come from your thoughts about something, and your basic knowledge of the world, yes, can only come from your experience of it. But to the degree that you are able to put your own ego aside, your own thoughts and feelings about something, and yes, assume almost the persona of someone else, you will be able to empathize with them, as you say. And to me, connection is the most powerful force in the universe. And again, I sound all new agey, but I can't think of a better way to put it. Atoms connecting, molecules connecting, people connecting through ideas, people connecting in herds and tribes, and that allowing them to survive. I mean, the evolutionary psychology behind all of it boils down to, if two people didn't find a way to go from being two solo human beings into one unit, we would have never made it. And empathy, I had never thought of it as deep empathy. So thank you for that, because yes, I usually just try to say, okay, what's it like? Like, my wife is a woman of color. She's a little nervous about what's going on in the world right now. And sometimes I almost roll my eyes and say, it's not going to get that bad. And I have to realize she's allowed to have this reaction based on where she's come from, Venezuela, and her experience as a woman of color in the predominantly white neighborhood in which I've moved us. And so...
Right. And that's really what I was alluding to in the first place, looking at empathy versus deep empathy, when I'm looking at, anybody whose life experience, including race, including culture, including socioeconomic background, is different from mine. I have to be aware of privilege. And so if I, okay, from my privileged perspective, I own that, this is how I see what that would feel like. It is false. And so I love that you're aware of that with your partner, and being able to contextualize that, and also being curious about it. So like, anytime it doesn't feel right, like, oh, this person's saying something, it doesn't work for me, like, hey, tell me, what does that feel like for you? Right. So you're scared right now. I'm speaking as you, like, I'm not feeling that. I don't have that in my cells, in my body. Right? Tell me what that's like. Right? Share it so I can learn more. And then it's up to you to do the research too. I mean, that's a whole, there's such an important conversation to be had about, I think, the responsibility that we have to be beyond aware of what's happening with race in our country, and showing up as anti-racist, not just, oh, I'm not racist, but like, okay, what are you doing? What are you doing to stand up against racism? Right. Well, one of the things I tell myself in the morning as I'm busy being thankful is the first thing I'm thankful for is my wife. And the second thing I'm thankful for is my kids. And when I think about them, I think, all right, I tell myself, be loving and patient and kind.
because your wife is going through more than you are. And she is, for health reasons, just for a variety of reasons. And my kids, I always say, be loving and patient and kind, because they're just being kids and that's all they know how to be. Connection to me, yes, you can't really have it without some sort of empathy. And empathy is something that you do have to practice. Some people are better at it than others. Some people are busy working on their own stuff and they forget that there's a world outside of them. Mm-hmm. And when they have a belief that's challenged, it might be something that if they took a moment and considered the source, you might be able to establish a dialogue there. And yes, we can circle it back around to acting. One thing that you learn as an actor, or at least that I would hope you would learn, is not just learning when to say your lines, but as your character to listen to the person in the scene, because they're having an impact on why you're saying what you're saying. So these skills, did you believe that you were going to be a performer before you believed that you were going to go into a career path that also included connecting with others in order to help them? Were those simultaneous?
So I do remember the first time I was on stage, and I was 6 years old, and there was a little, first grade skit, and my scene partner didn't show up, and I remember peering out from behind the curtain and seeing the parents in the folding chairs. Uh-huh. And I remember I was very excited to do this, and I remember that Jimmy was going to be the weatherman, and he wasn't there, and the show must go on. Please remember, I'm 6. And I was like, okay, threw my hair up into like a little ponytail atop my head, threw on the blazer that he was supposed to be on backstage, and I did all of his lines. Wow. Because I had memorized the whole thing. And that was, I sort of remember that, and my family does too, as sort of evidence of early passion for performance. Mm-hmm. And I always loved performing. I went to performing arts camps, and I performed in any play I could get my hands on, and I studied at a local university, and I studied singing, and I went and I did a Shakespeare intensive at Stella Adler right after graduating from college. And when I went to Tufts, I did all of the plays there, and I was studying music at the New England Conservatory of Music, studying classical singing. So all of those things were in place, and at the same time, my role has always been, as a friend, to actually, my curiosity about how someone's feeling has always been very real. And so I've always had an interest in how people think and feel and act. Mm-hmm. And certainly editing my dad's books was, helpful part of it, sure. and being indoctrinated early. But the joke of it is that, again, high school yearbook, later in life, I was predicted to be a singing psychologist. And so those things have been sort of integrated for me for a long time, but I didn't believe I could be integrated.
Oh, no?
I still thought that it was important to sort of be one thing and let that be true, even though, I had lots of models around me for doing many things. And especially having begun a career in entertainment and I was extremely fortunate, and right out of the gate was working. Mm-hmm. And I've had a wonderful experience. It is deeply important to me. I love being a performer. I love being a voice actor. I've been a writer in the industry. I've done some singing. I've been doing voiceover for over 20 years now. Uh-huh. And I love these things. And I also knew that there was something missing for me, not something else I needed to do instead, but more meeting a need that my soul had to be able to connect and be helpful in some way. And so it took until, really in the midst of a wonderful career in entertainment, really recognizing, I think it's okay to actually go get a master's in clinical psych and allow that part of myself to thrive alongside the creative part of myself. And that was a journey for me. So that the interest and the passion for both have always been there.
Yes.
But the focus and even permission to give myself to really embody all of these things
Uh-huh.
and enjoy them, that was later in my life.
Right. Well, now this is an obvious question, and you must get it a fair amount. So here you have your training in clinical psychology, and here you have your training as an actor. And as you're reading the breakdown of a character, and for those for you civilians out there, breakdown is basically a description of the character. What's in their head?
It's not when like you
their
look at the
environment.
audition
Yeah.
and you just start sobbing.
No,
I
that
can't
comes
do
later.
this.
That
That's
comes
later.
after
Okay,
you
cool.
leave the audition.
Yeah.
Is
That's the breakdown that we all have.
That's our breakdown.
And then I call
yes.
my therapist in
Right.
the process.
And who's in the middle of their own breakdown because they just
Sure.
That's something you want to hear from your therapist. I just can't even with you.
I just
Okay?
can't. Right.
So how much does one inform the other? Did you find that since you started getting all your book learning, did you start thinking, I'm looking at these characters completely differently than I used to? Or did you find that, no, I have the exact same point of view as I always have, but I have perhaps a more of an advantage now in maybe how I might approach this character because I'm beginning to understand the machinations of the human psyche more. Was there any of that happening, or was it all just, no, I'm going to keep academics out of me being an actor for this moment?
I think everything, if we're integrating ourselves purely, everything will inform everything else.
Right.
So definitely, I mean, I don't think I changed my method of working on characters so extremely that one is unrecognizable from the other.
Right.
But I definitely have allowed myself to find greater depth in certain characters. I don't think that it's a coincidence that playing Jess in Far Cry 5, who had a very traumatic history and whose trauma history had to be spoken, and I had to kind of activate that space. That character was one that I played, post getting my degree and post doing the work on myself that I would need to allow that understanding of a character who's truly gone through trauma.
Right.
So yeah, I think they do inform each other. I think more than that though, Chris, I feel like I'm a more grounded person than I was, because I was sort of floating in the space of play and levity, which I love, and voiceover and the goofiness and the uninhibited experience and the infinite playground that we get in the imagination that we sort of have to cultivate and live in to be able to work in, a blanket coated or acoustic foam surrounded, space to be able to create characters and believe that we are in this other world for a moment. But the groundedness and feeling like, again, that I've really kind of answered this thing that was important to me.
Right.
I think that actually helped me as a person, which can only help me approach characters. So it's almost less about methodology of approaching character, and more about me being in my body more.
Yes.
And in my mind more. And so yes, I mean, I think there was I had some discomfort adding psychology to my life, thinking, is someone gonna think that she couldn't really hack it as an actor, and I'm in the middle of a good place in my career when I decided to do it.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I know my truth. I know this is something I'm passionate about. I want to bring this into my world. So that even owning that made me sort of sit in my body more, sit in myself more. And then truly my career in entertainment actually continue to flourish and feel greater after that. So to me, that's going to be more about accepting a whole self and less about methodology.
Right.
All of that being said, I was just doing, I was coaching a class a couple weeks ago for the first time. I'd never done it before. And I said yes to it because it was more coaching than it was something didactic and method oriented. And here's how you should approach everything, which is not my deal.
Right.
But I said, I have a 3-step process, which is just my joke, but it's true. It is knowledge, empathy, and then the voice falls out of my face. That's it.
I like that.
I will research the crap out of a character. I will read into every word, every part of the description. I am the jerk who will try to break the code of the video game. And they're like, this is Project Yellow Flower. And I'm like, really? Hang on. Okay, you said cockroaches. I'm thinking that's locusts. So let's look up. Okay, I've got what that game's going to be. I mean, so I'm that person. But I'm also, okay, who's the developer on this? What's their general aesthetic? What's their style? What am I seeing in the character description? I'm all knowledge I can grab, all information I can grab. Then I jump into empathy. So I am generally a sparkly person, or I prefer to find that space when I can. But that doesn't mean that I can't find a dark side. So if I have to play a character who wants to murder everybody, I am not generally a murderous person, but I've got to find a way to empathize with her.
Right.
And then once those things are congruent, the voice falls out of my face. And if I start with the voice, I'm sure you know this.
Yes.
It's not connected.
Right.
So to me, that has to be enhanced. Sorry.
Yes.
The empathy piece of it and the knowledge, I think that is enhanced by psychology.
Yeah, one of the things I try to think of, if you want to give a very natural performance, I think don't say the words, let them come out. And the words aren't going to come out if you've not done some sort of prep on who the character is. Otherwise, as you have said, they'll come out as ChrisEdgerly. They won't come out as Hedon, an anime character I play that is an absolutely despicable human being. And I would, if like you, I don't think I would be very good at a didactic approach to voice acting. I think I would tell people, look, I'm more of the grip it and rip it style. I riff. I don't like to overstudy. I do like to feel as though I have some sort of preparation. But depending on what the character is, sometimes I can pick it up and go, okay, I've got it. Because if I overstudy, my spontaneity suffers, and a lot of my, I think what I bring to the table is this in-the-moment immediacy, and I find it's hard for me to recreate it if I've spent too much time. There are other things, though. Yeah, if it's animation, and if it's a deeper character, I do have to do the prep. And I can't give in to that impulse to just pick it up and go. My little ADHD thing of, who needs to study? Boom, 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 boom. That's. I just like to get in the ring and start dancing around.
Well, listen, if that's where ADHD takes you, which I think you're speaking to the part of ADHD that says, I don't want to read the directions. I don't care about. I got it. Just let me play the game, right? Yeah. And that's using your challenges as your assets, and that comes from knowing yourself, right? Which I think is quite brilliant to be able to do that. And I also am thinking about your background as a comedian, right? And you've done stand-up, right?
Yeah, so, for about 10 years as a professional comic. Yeah. So yeah. Right.
So since that's been a big part of your history, you don't just get up on stage and do your shtick. You get up on stage and you're feeling what the audience is giving you. And there's a part of that that's part and parcel to, I think, spontaneity, to improvisation, even if your jokes are set for the night, I would imagine. Yeah. And so you're activating that muscle every time you say, okay, I just want to go with it. I just want to see what happens. Right. I bet you're a voice actor that directors enjoy saying, let's just do another one and see what happens too. Because I bet when you're allowed to fly, it sails.
I usually need a couple of takes. Yes. Well, yes. I usually need a couple of takes because I am somebody who I'm a pleaser. And that is either a feature of ADHD or it's just who I was. It was baked in. It was factory installed. Who knows? It's there, and I just try to make sure that I'm aware of it when it works for me, when it doesn't work for me. But I like to give them whatever it is they wrote. But yes, if you tell me you've got to say every word exactly the way we say it, I'm naturally at some point going to say, can we do one more take? And I'm just going to mangle it because, hey, why not? Let's have a laugh before we move on to the next page. But yes, as with anything, my style would work wonderfully for people like me. And as you remember from The Office, back when we used to go into the office, we would get our copy. They used to print the copy out for us. And you would sit there and you'd have your copy, copy being the script. And anyone who knew me knew, well, here's Edgerly, so there's my chance to study, because he's going to look at his copy for about 4 seconds and then put it down and pick out people in the room to start chatting with.
Oh, no.
That was my thing. And I knew that. Because for me, I thought, look, this is all commercial copy. I don't even need to, I know how to say those words. Because I know how I'm going to do it when I get in the booth. Other people were there and they realized I've got to use my process. I've got to get into it. I've got to be completely comfortable when I walk into that booth. And sometimes they would go outside and they'd be halfway down the building. Whereas the chatterboxes were all inside and we had found each other. And I don't remember particularly with you. I think you usually like to either get your auditions done or at least get your prep done. And then you were free to talk about whatever.
Yeah, my thing would be, and this goes for in-person auditions today too, no matter how much I've prepped ahead of time, I would show up at CESD after my hour and a half drive through LA traffic to get there. And they'd be like, okay, Julie, we can take you right in the booth. Nobody's waiting. And I'll be like, yeah, I got to look at it again.
Yeah.
Like I've been practicing, I have it all, but I have to kind of reconnect with it. Probably my old study habits of needing to cram right before the test. But I think I found the socializing, because I'm like you, I'm social. I love to connect with people.
Right.
I found it too seductive, and I would get thrown off, and I would get too interested and involved. Again, I'm like, oh, hey, how are you? What's going on? And tell me, like, oh, you're writing a new book. Tell me about that. Oh, I just saw you on TV. What were you doing?
Right.
I want to ask everybody everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there was a day that you wanted to come up to me and I like put my earphones in and was like, I'm listening to something. I'm not listening to anything. I'm just studying, because I had to find ways of giving myself space and honoring that. But that social world, I came up in voiceover in New York, and that was, so social. It was, at the time, felt like, me and my small circle of friends would just, meet up at cafes and ride the subway together and get to the next job and do a group record and leave and do something else. And it was so inherently social. And the more technology has advanced, the less social we've become.
Yes.
I had a group record from home the other day. Again, we're all using our home studios.
Everybody's Zooming. Yeah.
Fortunate enough to be able to keep working, and fortunate enough to have a home studio.
Right.
I've been able to work during this time. You can hear me making sure to cite the gratitude, because that is not something that everyone has access to. So I had a group record, and I almost cried. I was like, this is so fun. We're just talking to each other, like missing that interaction. We have become more isolated in our isolation booths.
Yes. And this is one of the things that concerns me. And I talk about it with people on my stream whenever I can. Even before the pandemic hit, I would end my streams by looking at the camera and saying, go outside. Okay? You guys spend a lot of time playing games, and I understand it. They're addictive. They're fun. They're a different world where you get to be somebody else. But I also acknowledge that. And they acknowledge, they would bring it to me. They would say, I have problems with anxiety. I have mental health struggles. And there are things I'm working on. And I would say, look, your situation is your situation. But we all, to a person, we all need more human connection, because it makes us feel a part of something. And sometimes feeling a part of something greater than yourself makes you feel less isolated. When you're less isolated, you feel better, you feel warmer, you just feel more capable, confident, you name it. So I said, go out, talk to somebody, make eye contact, hug someone with their consent. Just get some interaction, because you're gonna want it, you're gonna need it, and and then report back to me tomorrow and we'll talk about it. And we can't do that now. And people who are struggling with anxiety are probably finding their anxiety getting a bit bigger, because they're not able to do the things sometimes that they need to do to address it. And
well, look, we're in a state of we're in a really odd state right now.
It is unprecedented.
Sure.
In our lifetime, unprecedented.
Yeah, I mean, and some of these words have become sort of like fluff.
Yeah.
Right. unprecedented is one of those fluff things that in these challenging times becomes fluffy. Because we use them so much, so frequently.
Yeah.
But we're in an odd, steady state of trauma, right? And it will differ depending on a person's belief system, awareness, what they see, perhaps where they are. You know, you and I are living in California and we're still in the red here. So we're really in it when it comes to COVID. And there are places, you know, I know someone who lives in Iceland and she was like, we're fine. Like we've been fine for a while. And so I think it's, you know, it will vary. And I know there are people, you know, in our country who don't have the same feelings that I know I do about, you know, being diligent, wearing a mask, washing my hands, not, you know, not having contact, and only social distance. But for those of us who are in that state, physically and mentally, you know, we're in this like constant hypervigilance, you know, looking to see like, am I going to get hurt? Is this person wearing a mask? Am I wearing a mask? Am I making this person comfortable? What's happening in the news? And we've been in this state in the news cycle for, you know, a few years now, looking at what's happening in the world and how do I react to that? And so it makes it very difficult for any of us to not fall prey to whatever usually challenges our psychology. So if we're more prone to feeling nervous, we might feel more nervous now. If we're more prone to substance use, we got to watch that right now, because it's going to feel like the most interesting thing to do. And it's going to take more work and more energy to resist and move to whatever moderation, sobriety, etc. a person might have decided is best for them. And so, you know, we are acutely aware right now of the fact that it's difficult. And yet we're so deep into this thing. We're 5+ months in, and there's a rhythm that we're in, which gives a false sense of normalcy. I do not like the phrase the new normal. I don't believe it. That presupposes that we've achieved something, some status that will be here for not only a long time, but almost for good, right? Normal tells us this is the typical thing and what we can expect almost for all time. I like to call it our current reality. And I find that frame is better for my own psychology, frankly.
Oh, sure.
I don't want to look at this as the new normal. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in adapting as things are coming at me. I'm interested in seeing what can I do during the current reality to soup up my home studio, make sure that I'm, you know, taking care of my family and, you know, taking care of myself because of the current reality. But I'm not looking at making sweeping changes for the rest of my life based on an assumption that this is it forever. You know?
Well, and I think a lot of this is generational. There are, like my granddad died 20 years ago, but he was born in 1910. And I looked back as the pandemic was getting its hooks into us. I began to think about all the restrictions on my life and everyone around me and their lives. I thought, this is really hard. This is really hard. I understand why some people feel kind of hopeless right now and helpless. Helpless is never a feeling you want to have, because then you feel like, oh, I'm in pain and I can't get out of it. That's what drives people to make really bad choices. I looked at what my grandfather's life was and his wife, my grandmother. My grandfather was born in 1910. He graduated college. He was graduated from college in 1933, the worst year of the Depression. He's out of college, ready to work. Well, guess what? Worst economic year in the history of the country. He gets a job anyway. So he grows up during Spanish flu. My grandmother was born and almost immediately got Spanish flu as an infant. And they said, oh my God, if she lives, which we don't think she will, her immune system will be wrecked. Well, she made it to 72 and she died of emphysema, which you only get from smoking, which she probably started to do as an adult thinking, oh, I ain't going to make it to 30 anyway. I may as well smoke it up. So yeah. And then World War II. My grandfather gets his draft notice in 1939, gets out of it in 1946. He's there the entire time. lieutenant on a boat in the Pacific, sees action, never talks about it, has 3 kids while he's in the Navy, and just gets any job he can get, then lives through the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and then somewhere in the 70s, the man he had worked for told him, yeah, by the way, that pension plan I told you have, well, you actually don't have it. And this is somebody who's maybe 10, 15 years away from retirement at that point.
Oh
And so my granddad quits that job, realizes I have no retirement. I have not a penny to my name other than what I have saved, trains him, goes and works for the IRS in his, I guess, 50s, goes in entry level, works extra hard, studies extra, stays longer than everybody else, and works until he retires at 70, gets himself a pension, buys his house, all of that. And I thought, okay,
wow,
I think I can wear a mask and wash my hands some more. And because it's context. And he lived to 88. And honestly, he had 2 heart attacks, one in his 60s, and then I think one like right after he turned 70 or something like that. And just sort of, okay.
What a survivor, and also like a thriver.
Yeah.
Not only did he manage to live through these things, but he managed to thrive through these things.
Yes. And so a lot of it is we always hear about the greatest generation. And I do believe what they achieved was pretty amazing. They had their own demons, because most of them are no longer with us, sadly. Most of them grew up not learning how to get in touch with their feelings and talk about things that bother them. It's like, push those down because we have a war to fight. Push those down because there's 25% unemployment. Push those down because, I just don't know anymore. I'm just used to pushing it down. But you can find a happy medium. You can learn to let out what you're feeling, and you can also learn the inner fortitude, because you're a human being and you adapt, because that's what we do, to get through these times. But everyone needs context. I'm lucky. I had it in my own family. I just didn't look for it. And then here it is. I thought, I think I'm going to find a way to get through this, because it's in my DNA, and I'm willing to bet that anyone struggling with something, there's some way that we can help them find a reference point where they can say, look, I'm not expecting to do a complete 180 here, but I can take myself tomorrow farther than I am today in just a little bit. And perspective is very important. And context is very important. And you're right, if you're always on the internet getting that wrong narrative, it's hard to get that. It's hard to get that context. You are empathetic. Just my grandfather's story has you emotional. You're a very good empath. That's what you are.
Yeah, I mean, story impacted me. There's a lot of heart. There's a lot of I see also some of what you've shared about yourself in that story about your grandfather. And yes, it's strength and fortitude, but it's also there's something about being driven by the choice to survive something, right? That I also find beautiful, and that he didn't allow himself to stop and be deterred by a complete roadblock.
Oh yeah, right? More than one.
And that, right, each time he met one. And I mean that, and I am an empath. I mean, I wear my heart on my sleeve. I mean, I am, like, I'm all sleeve. I don't know what to say. It's just
I'm the same way. I've talked about this before. As an actor, your emotions are always right here. They're always just about ready to come out. Some people are just better at bundling them up and releasing them as needed.
Right.
I found with me, and I bet this is true with you, as soon as I had kids, that almost went out the window. I could tear up during a commercial. I just am so much more in touch and ready to let feelings out. And I guess it's from having kids. I do not know for sure, but I feel things on such a deeper level, or at least maybe I'm just aware of them more. But kids, for me, absolutely sealed it.
Maybe that gave you greater access to those feelings, and maybe
Possibly.
It also allowed you to give yourself permission to have those feelings. I think permission is something that we have to grant ourselves when it comes to how we feel and how we act, and we identify ourselves. I've kind of always been this way in terms of being affected by things. I what I've done more is allowed it. For me, it's permission, right? To be that it's okay. I don't have to be embarrassed by the fact that something will affect me.
Right.
That living in that space of truth is not only more congruent, but actually more helpful for others.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd rather be of service in that way, and I'd rather show up authentically. And in terms of my kid, I'd like him to know
mm-hmm.
when I have an actual feeling about something. I'd rather model that for him.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
oh my God, when this kid was 5, I love my child. When he was 5 years old, he was playing with something and he said, that's impossible. That's impossible. And I very magnanimously said, oh, nothing's impossible. I will impart the wisdom and nothing's impossible.
Right.
And he looked at me, and I will tell you the entire quote. He just said, that's not true, Mommy. Something's impossible for love to end. You can put your hand up to stop it, but love will move right through.
He said that at 5?
5. It's like, bye, I'll be on the floor in a puddle if you need me. So I'd rather sort of create an open dialogue for feelings, awareness, connection in my child. And if I'm trying to pretend that I'm not upset about something, what the hell am I modeling for him? Now, if I'm sobbing all day long, that's also not great modeling. So I better get, I have to, I got to work on myself then and make sure that I'm not, allowing that to be in modeling. But I do think authenticity is I don't know, probably the key to everything. Authenticity and empathy and curiosity. I've been thinking lately that I want to get a list of my favorite words and just put them up behind me somewhere,
little reminders,
touch them all the time.
You mentioned earlier, I think you mentioned it, but habits, or at least I'm a big believer in this as well. And this is a Tony Robbins thing too. And people are going to think, well, I bet he just checks in with Tony every day. Actually, I don't. There are just a few ideas he has. I thought those are good. I'm going to absorb something that's useful to me. Willpower will only take you so far. Habit is what gets you where you want to go. Work on building a habit, because a habit is something you just end up doing by rote. As one person once said, if you're used to getting coffee every single day, you don't need to psych yourself up to do it. It's ingrained. You repeat this behavior very easily. And so a lot of people do like to have words they see that are very important to them, because there's just look, my habit is I'm going to be right here every day on the regular. I want to see those words. I want to have a habit of those words operating in my mind so I can put them into use. Are you a proponent of building habits? Or is that not the way you would usually approach trying to create something new in your life?
I don't tend to use the word habit habitually. So I'm not sure. I do think that ritualizing certain things in our lives, but to me, I love language. So I might get a little too obsessive and caught up in the word choice, and it might end up being that I do agree with what you just said, but I have to work myself into it. I think intention matters, right? If your habit, Chris, every day were to wake up and do a gratitude list every day without intention, without thought, and it's just a habit, then you're not really integrating. You're not really internalizing it. So to me, ritualizing something, at the beginning of my work day, I will kind of walk in, I will, sort of set my own, if it's intention, or, breathe into what I'm about to do, hit the microphone. And when I finish, sometimes I have little twinkly lights, of course, in my booth, and I'll turn them on. That will be the beginning of that experience, and I'll turn them off, and maybe that's a ritual. But I do it with intention. If I'm using that ritual day, it will be because I want to let that be encapsulated, right? Let that be this one space in my day that I'm dedicating to work. And then I'm going to shift over to a different part of my brain or a different part of my heart, or go downstairs and play with the new dog and allow work to stay in the booth. Right. So ritualizing something with intention, I think, speaks to me. I'm sure that what you mean by habit is something like that.
Yes.
I bumped up against it because anything that feels like we're doing it simply by rote makes me feel like we're moving into autopilot.
Right.
And I like kind of a combination of, I'm used to this. This is just something I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm intending to do this because it's meaningful to me.
Yes. Well, no, that's a good distinction to make, and it's true. And I could even find a parallel to that in the world of exercise, because I love to exercise, and I do it 5 days a week. I have a habit of exercising 5 days a week because I know it's important. I want it to be something that I am just unconsciously putting into my day, or actually consciously, but yes.
Right.
But they'll say this about exercise. You'll see people doing reps in the gym, and they're just sort of going through the motions. There's no intention with each rep. It's like, you know what? You're going to get a minimal result from that because you're not focusing on the muscle. Right. You're not focusing on the form. You are going to get the minimum out of your time. Why not take the exact same amount of time, but just be more focused on what you're doing and why you're doing it? So yes, I have occasionally found myself going through the gratitudes a little bit by rote. And I'll try to break myself out of that, get back into the moment. And I've found that at least there's a very minimal benefit to doing it, even by rote, is because those words in my mind still affect how I'm going to start the day. I've crowded out negative stuff. I could have spent that time negatively at the very least. Even if I screw up and do it by rote, I won't have started my day grumbling about something.
I really agree with you. I think I absolutely. If you have a mantra and intention that you say every day, even on the days that you're not like, I'm going to integrate this and really feel it, it's getting in somewhere. And I really do agree with that. I think that's that point is well taken.
Although
I agree.
If we throw this into the world of acting again, and when I have voice actors on, it's funny because they'll realize later, geez, we didn't talk about voice acting that much. And it's because, it's one of the least interesting things about a person sometimes. Yes, the people watching want to know more about it. But all right, here's something for you guys. When I've done video games, particularly video games, you get a page of dialogue and it's not written like a script. It's 100 lines, like it's a Microsoft Word, Excel spreadsheet or whatever it is. I have left my body so many times reading that dialogue. Grenade, incoming, check the door, to the left, to the right. All right, give me 3 in a row of that. By the time I'm done, I don't know what I've said. The time may have passed. I'm not even sure anymore. Right. But I have a process and I have a technique that works so that the performance is still there. And it's not like this guy was talking about something traumatic that happened in his life. He's doing call-outs. And so I've found that, okay, this is one of those times where even doing something by rote works. But in a voiceover setting, when you're doing a video game, sometimes I have found I just cannot stay in the moment for every single line. It's a feature of the business for me. That may not be true for you.
It doesn't ring necessarily true for me, but I certainly nodded when you said there have been times that you find yourself checking out.
Yeah.
Again, everybody's process is different. I hear it from myself when I'm not present, and I will ask for another take.
Oh, really?
If I'm yelling grenade and I didn't really feel like I saw the grenade, I think I can let it go. So it's like, yes, if you're talking about like combat barks, or if I'm, taking damage, like I didn't really feel like I got my throat slit, and I made the wet gurgly sound, but I wasn't really feeling the pain. Like, no, I'm not going to go that far. But if something doesn't feel right to me, if I can tell I wasn't really present, sometimes I'll ask for another take. But like, I'm admittedly obsessive about this stuff, and that's a blessing and a curse for me. I will spend an inordinate amount of time on auditions because I want to make sure it clicks for me, and I want to be proud of what I submit. And sometimes that gets me into a little bit of trouble because I work for so long on that stuff. And then after I've worked for so long, it has lost the spontaneity. And I will delete that whole take once I've got it, and then I'll do a whole other one, and that's the one I submit.
Right. This is an interesting question that I do get a lot. There are a lot of people that will watch this that are aspiring voice actors or fledgling voice actors, and a lot of times they don't know how to audition themselves because they will agonize over a take, or perhaps sometimes they won't be attentive enough. They will send it off before it's ready, for you and for me, because I have a little bit of a beehive of a brain. I can find that there's sort of my Rubicon is usually there's a take where I've hit and I've realized I've become obsessive now. Okay. I had it 5 minutes ago and I don't know when it happened, but I've crossed that Rubicon and I think I need to delete this, shake it up for a second and start over. So being able to, again, this goes back to know thyself. Yeah. Know when that beehive of a brain is working for you and know when it's sort of working against you, this tendency to overdo it. Right. And that's going to be different for every single actor out there. I think if a person knows themselves, you know when you're phoning it in and you know when you're overdoing it. So
I remember Andrea Romano saying, always save your first take. Like, go back to it because sometimes the first take is really the right one. And I'll do that. I mean, I've obsessed myself into oblivion on something. And also, like, if I'm obsessing that hard on something, I'm probably not bringing enough of me into it, right? We were talking about that blend between like really being in someone else's shoes and then actually being that other person. And like, sometimes I'm just not finding, again, like the place that it makes sense to me. Right. And I'm trying too hard. Right. That goes back to permission, allowing it to be what it is. So I don't know. I mean, that's why I don't want to do the didactic part of teaching. I really enjoyed the coaching though. I had done a lot of directing in undergraduate school and I directing theater, and I forgot that that's what coaching would be like. Yes. Sort of like directing in the moment. And I really enjoyed it. The students were wonderful.
This does not surprise me with you because you are all about connection. Didactic tends to be one way. And coaching is a back and forth. It's a conversation because I can't 100%. Coach you. Yeah, I can't coach you unless I see what you've got. I've got to have you show me what you've got. Now I can communicate with you. Yeah. So I could imagine if you ended up taking a different path, sometimes we like to ask ourselves, what would we have been had we not gone down this path? For me, I think it would be something along the lines of history professor. But, oh, really? Well, because I love stories. Everyone has a story, and history is a story. It just depends on who's telling it. And I would love to tell stories to an audience vis-a-vis, my lectures, which would be for students. But I couldn't just be that guy that gets up there and just regurgitates the same things. Right. I'd have to have them asking and answering questions. I'd have to have this back and forth because I would want to be that professor that I can't wait till I get to his class. And with you, I could see that you certainly could be a teacher, but I don't think you would enjoy just teaching and telling these people, memorize this stuff, test is on Friday. You would want to,
sorry to interrupt you.
No.
It doesn't leave enough room for curiosity, right? So a didactic approach is, I'm an expert, I know lots of things, and I will impart my wisdom to you. That's not what I believe in. Right. There are things, yes, I've studied some stuff. I have some knowledge. Cool. But like, in terms of what's important in life, I'm more interested in having a really connected conversation with one person and seeing what that person might feel and need and pull out from them what the core is and figure out what we do with it, which only comes from being curious enough to ask questions. So yes, that kind of coaching piece works well for me because I'm receiving information and reacting to it. The idea of saying, I will tell you what I know and you'll learn from it I don't know. And I certainly don't want to be saying that people who teach are inherently egotistical. That's not what I'm saying. I just know that for myself, it doesn't leave enough room for me to be receiving information and responding. And I think that's when I'm best in my element, most in my element.
Well, luckily for you, you don't have to take another path. You are exactly on the paths that you want to be on. And when I mentioned generational, too, as far as context goes, I also realized, too, that my father, when he retired probably in his late 50s. He put in a good solid 35 years of government work between being in the Army and then being, in the upper echelons of government. And he said to me, this was when I was about 28 years old, he says, Chris, your generation is amazing to me. When I got out of college, I just got a job because that's what you did. You get out of college, first you go to college, then you get a job and you keep that job forever and then you retire. And that's it. And you just get any job. You just make sure it's one that pays well and is respectable. And he says, your generation actually sits around and thinks about what you want to do, and then you go and do that. And I think even now, I'm a little bit older than you. I think I was perhaps the last generation of people that went to school, got a job, kept it till right around retirement age, and were able to retire. And I'm not retirement age yet, but the people I went to school with will probably be able to do that. Anyone that came along after them sees the corporate world changing, how they do business, how they pay people, how they contract people. And I am glad to have discovered this. I think we should be looking at our lives in terms of chapters. Tomorrow, a week, 6 months, a year, 5 years from now, these are the chapters of your lives. Be aware that whatever you choose to do in a few years, you might say, enough of that shit. I've got new information. Time for a new chapter.
Look, I did Rob Paulson's Talkin' Tunes a few years ago.
I have chatted with Rob right here.
He's so wonderful.
He's awesome.
What a
I wish he would cheer up though. Don't you? You wish Rob would be just
his perspective is so dour. And
it's only
doesn't have enough vibrance.
It's only cancer, Rob, for the love of God. I mean,
he's amazing. He's really wonderful.
Yeah.
And he did some very kind things for me at some point when I needed to connect with him. He was really wonderful. Really, really beautiful human being. But I was on Talkin' Tunes years ago, and I use this analogy, and I think it speaks to what you're sort of getting at right now, which is like how many crayons are in the crayon box, right? And I feel like when we're kids, we're asked, what's your favorite color? What do you want to be when you grow up, right? Which is basically, how would you like to put yourself into a little box and stay there? How would you like to identify yourself? What will be the title of your book for life, right? And okay, well, I guess I wowould like, burnt umber, and that's what I'm going to be forever, and this is my color. And then to open up space for it's not even just like the box of 12, it's not even the box of 64 crayons, it's the mega box. And I want cerulean blue, and I'm interested in this like yellow sun, and all of these parts of ourselves. And I think that is, for me, part of getting in touch with passion. Because if we're so teleological, we're so goal directed, and I want to be this, and I set my plan when I was 4 years old, and I set my plan when I was 12 years old, I will always be this kind of person. And we forget to shift our operating system. We forget to get the update. We forget to see if we're still interested in moving toward those goals. They match up with who we are now. Then we're moving from a place of old passion and not from a state of who we've developed into. And so maybe we collect more crayons and we use them all. Maybe we, throw them all into a fist and just make lots of rainbows everywhere. And maybe we just switch colors every once in a while. But paying attention to that and letting passion guide us, to me, falls very nicely into a philosophy that I appreciate, which is, I believe that interest breeds aptitude. So if we allow ourselves to follow the things that we're truly passionate about and we're really interested in, then our, again, curiosity will be very authentic. I want to learn this. I'm interested in it.
Yeah, and you'll put the time
put the time into it.
Yeah.
And so success, it doesn't always work this way, right? But if the aptitude grows and the interest remains, then the passion and the skill find a place together, and it can create success. It's not always that way, but if you're fortunate enough to be able to find that path, it's one to stick to. And I think a lot of artists, we're fueled by passion. Why would we do this work if we didn't feel passionate about entertainment?
Yeah, I mean, this business is too hard to abide the people that don't really feel it. I mean, it's too hard. There's too much rejection. There's too many obstacles for you to not put up with it. I mean, who would let themselves in for this if you weren't passionate about it? Because, man, you get so many off-ramps. You can quit now. You can quit now. You can quit now. No, it sucks, but I'm just going to hang with it. So that actually makes me think of Bertrand Russell, who you must have come across in your reading. Bertrand Russell wrote a book in 1930 called The Conquest of Happiness. It is.
I've never read it.
It is an astonishing book. It's only about that thick. You could read it in a day, especially you.
Okay.
With your big brain, you could read it You could read it post haste.
Hold on, let me see. Let me see if I can read the book. Hold on, I'm falling over.
Yeah.
That's very nice, but
I try.
It's very sweet.
In 1930, he wrote about, and of course it's 1930, so he used the word zest. You should cultivate enthusiasm. You should have a zest for life. If you are enthusiastic about life, how can you possibly not find something to get up and get excited about every single day? You must be enthusiastic. And if you can't find something to be enthusiastic about, you're not looking. Because and he did away with cynicism in one sentence. He says, there are people out there that like to believe that there is nothing new under the sun. They're blasé about everything. And he says, the wise man gets his enjoyment and his pleasure where he can find it. So the wise man will certainly, acknowledge that, yes, some things are not new, but there's always something else to learn. He talked about going on a walk in the country with a 4-year-old. And he says, this 4-year-old, every little puddle and leaf, it would be intensely curious about it. It would get right up on top of a little cricket and be absolutely awestruck by it. And he says, there's no reason why an adult can't be that way. You can't tell me that you know everything. And so cultivating enthusiasm for something is an absolutely great way to find purpose and, yes, build aptitude. So,
and you're making a great case for therapy too, because if it's not possible to access that space of interest or enthusiasm, and you've had it in the past, right? Because for some people it's not as easy. For some people the wiring makes it tough for them to grab onto the same way as somebody else. But if you've had interest and passion and enthusiasm in the past and you're not finding it now, sometimes it's a good time to do that processing work, to find the space, to see how maybe depression's in my way, maybe anxiety's in my way, maybe fear is in my way, maybe there's a thought process and a meaning making and a core value that needs to be observed. And then find that space.
Yes.
So
for you, when you find yourself perhaps encountering some of the things that are obstacles for you, maybe anxiety, maybe some fear, what is your process that you find that helps you get around that? And you know that you can never make negative things just vanish, but you can certainly minimize them to where you can get back to what you were planning to do.
I think it depends on what it is. I know that there's a space I never expected, which is that even if I'm having a day where I'm feeling the weight of the world or I'm feeling really anxious, if I can get myself to the microphone to do whatever auditions I have that day, something shifts in me. And I think there's something like I feel like I've come home. It sounds so dorky, but I did on camera first and it was good. I was lucky I worked, but I dropped it in favor of writing and of really focusing on voiceover. And I found, if I look back at stuff I did, I see myself on camera, I can see how self-conscious I was. I watch it. And in the booth, I feel completely uninhibited, and I can be as goofy, as creature-like, and as I need to be. And I think that sets me free. But that's just like a behavioral technique for myself, is like get my ass up and go to the microphone. But in terms of perspective, I will sometimes schedule worry.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So if I have trouble sometimes with, hello, Einstein.
Oh, let's see him.
Come in. Come here, Einstein. Come here. Come here, buddy. Nope. Went right into the donut.
Okay. Well,
nope. He's in the donut.
He's in his thing.
God, he's so stinking cute. He's so cute. I can't with this dog. So, okay. So back to your question.
You schedule worry.
I will. If I sometimes have trouble sleeping. My brain is really active. If there's something I find myself worrying about, I wake up and worry. I'll sort of give myself to be like, okay, you're allowed to. This is not the right time to worry. Mm-hmm. This is actually an ill-placed worry. Mm-hmm. It's 4 a.m, Julie, but let's schedule it. I will give you permission at 8:15 in the morning. Mm-hmm. You can feel free to worry about this thing.
Right.
Sometimes I find that useful. I also, for me, a really simple concept took me a long time to get, mm-hmm. which is feelings are not fact. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, has been incredibly grounding for me, because I do have such an active mind. And as a creative person, I can paint all of the pictures of whatever thing I'm afraid of. And the best way that I can describe feelings are not fact is to say, like, you can feel lonely. Mm-hmm. That's the feeling, but it doesn't mean you are alone.
Right.
Right. So we can sort of get carried away with a feeling of fear. I'm so scared. I'm so scared. What if this happens? COVID. What if I get sick? What if I get sick? Okay. Mm-hmm. What's the fact? Mm-hmm. The fact is, let me look around me. Where am I? Am I healthy today? How's my family today? What's the reality? What's right in front of me? What do I know? Mm-hmm. Okay, so what I'm experiencing is fear. And fear is a feeling, and I can acknowledge that. But mm-hmm. as soon as I separate them, I decrease the power that the feeling has to take me over and convince me that the bad thing has happened mm-hmm. or will happen. Mm-hmm. So those things are sort of, I think, shorthand. And also, if I'm really feeling overwhelmed, I will talk to someone. I'll ring up a therapist. I will talk to a friend. I mm-hmm. will be open about how I'm feeling. And I know, for me, my last answer to your question, it's such a great question, and I was ill prepared for it, but I have one last answer.
Okay.
I know that giving what I want to receive mm-hmm. is gold for me. And I'm really active on Twitter because I'm so verbal and I like all the words. I can write the words and connect with people that way. But I will sometimes send out a message of light or kindness or gratitude mm-hmm. if I'm feeling it. And sometimes I send it out there because I know I need it.
Right.
And I'd rather just give the thing that mm-hmm. I know I need. And the reflection back mm-hmm. is incredible. When I see someone say, well, I really needed that today. And that I was having a darker day and I did need that kindness. All of a sudden my heart is filled. Mm-hmm. And that is so grounding for me mm-hmm. and lightening at the same time. Mm-hmm. And then levity would be the last. I already said it was the last. So this is the epilogue to the last thing.
Yeah.
Is allowing myself to have space to laugh. When I was going through, when my father was dying, if we're going to go into a really dark space for a minute, mm-hmm. I had to, drive to the hospital every day and go through that process. And someday I would love to tell this to Patton Oswalt, but I listened to his stand-up the entire time. And it was medicinal for me.
Oh, yeah.
I was absolutely in my grief. I was absolutely in the connected place of impending loss. Mm-hmm. But my father loved comedy. Mm-hmm. And I was able to connect through humor mm-hmm. with my dad as I'm moving to go to the hospital. And I'm laughing with Patton Oswalt. He's doing these ridiculous routines that I love so much.
Yeah.
And that really helped. And I was able to stay with my grief. And I was able to stay with levity, and I felt better.
Was there a particular routine? Because I know his comedy very well. I've actually gotten to work with him in voiceover once when he did The Simpsons.
Please tell him my story.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen him forever, but yeah. But no, talk about somebody who had to go through grief.
That's why it was him.
Oh, boy,
That's why it was him. That's why it was him.
Yeah.
Because I would listen to his comedy from before his wife passed and after. Mm-hmm. And it was a reminder for me
Right.
of how we can have joy and we can have sorrow and we can find joy again. And so I would listen to a span of years of his work.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer to your question, yes, his Star Wars My Little Pony thing, I've listened to so many times. I think all you have to do is look up My Little Pony, but he talks about how Star Wars was the first realm that he was really invested in, and now he sees his daughter, and Alice is very excited about My Little Pony, and this is her realm. And I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but that just would have me in happy tears at a time that I was also accessing sad tears. And you know, again, it's permission to have levity, permission to laugh even when things are hard. You know, that it always comes back to that congruence and authenticity.
Oh yeah. And I've found there are certain mechanical things you can do that, whether you are aware of it or not, I mean, you're aware of it, but activate chemical processes in your body that make you feel better. You can sing.
Absolutely.
Sing neurologically is proven to make you feel better. If you laugh, like open mouth, big laugh at anything for almost any reason, you elevate your mood. There are certain things you can do. Even your posture can actually elevate your mood or lower it depending on what you're doing. There are certain ways, there are cheat codes, there are little hacks that you can cheat code your way out of a bad mood if you just start to use certain mechanics. And of course, you have to continue it. You can't just laugh once and then, oh, depression gone. But there are certain things you can do just to have a chemical awareness of what's happening in your body. Exercise. Exercise is amazing for anxiety, because I originally saw Applegate for anxiety. This was the reason why it's good to have an uncle as a psychologist. I'd call him up and he'd say, okay, what you're going through, you have anxiety. All right. And this has been a long time coming. And I said, Uncle John, I thought that when you get older, you get wiser and you get more chill. And he goes, yeah, that's not really true. Actually, whatever issues you have just get larger and larger until you deal with them. And so, yeah. And I had insomnia because I couldn't turn my brain off, and I was convinced something was wrong. I had panic attacks. What are the panic attacks? I have a tumor. That's what it must be. Because if you look up WebMD,
are not fact. That's it, right? The feeling I have is panic. The feeling in my body, that must mean fact. It must mean there's something wrong with me.
Medically, I have tingling. I have this and that. And what Applegate told me is you have somatic paining, meaning you can manifest just about any physical sensation you want. Your brain is amazing at what it can do. But we worked on the insomnia first, and one of the things he told me about insomnia was, he said, look, if you got something on your mind, before you go to bed, he says, what I do is I'll write down what I plan to do about it tomorrow. Or if I need to do something about it right now, I'll write it down, and then I'll say, okay, I've dealt with it, so no need to think about that anymore.
It's like scheduling my worry.
Scheduling your worry.
Right.
To say, I'm attending to this. And
absolutely.
You're
honoring it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, you're not saying, well, it's dumb to be worried. It's like, no, you probably have convinced yourself there's a good reason, but why don't you analyze it? And I did, in my own reading, discover the exposure therapy version. I think I don't know if it's called ERT or not, but if you have a particular thought that you obsessively have and it bothers you, gives you anxiety, one way to do it, and this was difficult, but it worked very well for me. It took a while. I laid down on the floor, got very comfortable, and I let this really ugly, horrifying, obsessive thought I had that would sometimes wreck my day, and I let myself feel it. I didn't challenge it. All I did was look at it as it passed, as it existed in my mind, and I noted my anxiety level. And then I didn't do anything about it. I didn't engage in the ritual, the mental ritual I had, because it was an obsessive compulsion. And then I noticed, the anxiety is lowering, because as you let it exist without fighting it, you don't make an enemy of it, it begins to lower. It took weeks, might have even taken longer than that, of doing this regularly. And I noticed that, after a while, I'm actually bored with this worry. It no longer has the same power over me. And I read about this. It's a form of exposure therapy to a thought, and it's sort of a way of supervising your own attention to this thought that's bothering you. It's a mechanical way to approach it. It worked for me. I don't know how well it works. I don't know how often you've come across this as a practice. If you've ever recommended it for somebody, it's all, different. But
I mean, look, what I hear that it did for you is that you, over time,
yes.
in addition to the feeling of boredom, which sounds delightful after a while, right?
Yeah.
But that over time, you're sort of amassing experiences, flooding with this thought and surviving.
Yeah.
So you were talking earlier, the greatest fear is like something will happen and I won't be able to handle it, right? So, okay, what if I have this fear and I can't handle the fear? What if the fear is too much for me and it eats me alive, right? But if you're laying on the floor and having this experience, I can understand why that would be meaningful to you, especially given, what you shared earlier. Yeah, I mean, I can see it's the same thing. I mean, my answer is always the same. Everybody's different. Everything's unique. Like I can see that being useful, and I can see if someone's having a PTSD revisiting of a traumatic experience, that flooding is actually going to be re-traumatizing. So I would never say like across the board, this is a great thing for everyone to do. I can hear why it was useful for you.
Right.
And
somebody else calls you up. I've taken 7 hostages.
Right.
But you said.
Right. Yeah. I think that's, my perspective that we're all different and that's good, serves me well, in those times.
Right. Well,
anyway.
Let's see. The one thing I love about these things is I don't treat them as boilerplate. So I don't, I don't just stop and go, what's your favorite character and why? How did you get into the business? Is that, so we've talked about so much. Is there something you would like to focus on, you would like to hit, you would like to mention that is important to you, that you want people to hear from you, or not? I'm here for that.
I don't think I came in with an agenda.
Okay.
So I think I would be reaching for something. Let me say this thing and let it have an impact. I feel like I just wanted to be present for whatever conversation you and I were going to have. I did an interview earlier in pandemic times. And my friend Morla was interviewing me, and she started by saying like, how are you? And I went, well, and she was like, you're stopping to think about it? That's amazing. We had like our whole conversation about it. So I feel like it's part of like my process to try to be present.
Right.
So I didn't come in with an agenda. I just kind of wanted to be present. And you and I have 18 years of knowing each other and sitting on the marble floor together and trying not to distract each other, or trying to distract each other from our coffee over the years. And we've shared booths together, and it's been really exciting to watch you move through your career. And I like this space for you because you have so much energy and so much curiosity, and I know you like connecting with people. So it's been really fun for me to see you in this element and talk to you in this way.
Well, I mean, look at how we are able to regard each other now too, because I remember, and Rob Paulson is a big reason that I'm doing this, because I read his book, and at 60, he said, I'm going to learn podcasting. Because right now work's not as busy for me, so I'm going to learn podcasting. And then he gets cancer and he's still learning podcasting. And I thought, you know what? If Rob can learn podcasting while he's undergoing chemo, I think I can learn how to stream. And and I'm 10 years younger. I shouldn't feel as disaffected by technology as somebody 10 years older. So I already buy into the idea of finding a new passion every few years if you can. But the way we're able to regard each other's lives and careers is valuable, because I see you as you are now reaching this position of working steadily in voiceover and being thankful for it, being able to counsel and help others when you were able to schedule it, and being thankful for that. And these are the things that you really want to be doing. You're not pushed into them. You're not shoved into this corner by circumstance. This is a path you created for yourself. You could have done anything. You have so much that's available to you. You're smart enough to do anything, and you're aware enough to know of all your options, and you've chosen these things, and they're working for you. I love that, because it makes me think about this. This must have been at least 10 years ago. We worked on Don't Be Afraid of the Dark.
Oh my gosh, that's right. We did a trailer together
yes.
for Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, and we had to be these scary voices.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And it was at Disney, and I remember walking out of Disney, and you and I just chatted for a minute before we got into our cars, and I thought, I've already known you for a few years, and you're moving here, and I'm moving here. And that was almost like a waypoint, a way station till now. And I remember thinking back to that, because that and Comic-Con a few years ago, you, me, Fred Tatasciore, all of that, getting to be up on a stage with all these people.
That was so much fun.
Yeah. So, and every now and then I'll think back and I'll look, these people I know that I enjoy talking to, this is my tribe. These are the people I'm meant to be around, and it makes me feel joy, real joy and satisfaction and fulfillment. And I'm so thankful that I get to feel that way. I'm so grateful that I like people, that I have such an easy... Seriously, I'm glad...
I really get it. Oh, I really get it.
And sometimes people piss me off. Sometimes they anger me. But for the most part, I'm very grateful that I find people interesting, because it's such an easy way to feel good.
You sort of talked me into a final point.
All right.
Because it just came up naturally.
Okay.
You're talking about joy, right? Accessing joy. So doing this coaching a couple of weeks ago, the only other semi-didactic thing that I said was, if you haven't found the joy, you haven't found the character yet. And to me, joy, it doesn't, again, if you're playing an evil character, it's not like, I can't wait to kill everyone. It's not that. It's more like, to me, I have joy in connection, and in that feeling of this clicks, this is connected.
Right.
And if I haven't found that place where I'm enjoying what I'm doing with a character, I haven't found it yet.
Right.
And so finding the joy is something that I do try to move toward. Again, not pretending that there isn't sorrow, but making a choice intentionally to move toward the things that offer that kind of congruence. And I too am steeped in gratitude for where I am and for every step along the way. And, I can't help but mention, I'm highly aware of being a privileged white woman who has had opportunities that I know that many people of color have not been able to have. And so while I hold gratitude for these things, I also want to be part of the change, because it shouldn't be that it's I get to be here steeped in gratitude, and there are so many incredibly talented, passionate people who might not be getting the opportunities that they could have and should have because of systemic racism. So I just have to throw that out there, because it's sort of, I don't feel comfortable saying oh, everything's been so great, and it's just follow your passion, which I believe, but there's privilege in there. And if I ignore that, I'm kind of ignoring that reality, and then I'm not standing up against racism.
There are a lot of people who also would love to follow their passion, and they find that there are obstacles that other people aren't having to face. And so it is not being intellectually dishonest to say that some people have fewer obstacles. There was a comedian I worked with years ago. His name is David Tyree. I don't know if he is still with us. He's a black comedian and older guy and a funny guy. But there was an undercurrent of anger in his act, but he operated that way. That was on purpose. He was activist minded, and a lot of his act was about injustices and how he would approach them. And I remember us having a conversation, and I was early 20s, so I was a bit full of myself. And I remember arguing with him about just how bad things were for one race or the other. And he said something that struck me as true, and it still is. He said, look, you're a white guy. The only thing you have to worry about is not living up to your potential. And I said, look, I can't argue with that. It's true. I did not have the same obstacles in my way in general. Now, I had the obstacle of, unfortunately, looking like just about every other white guy that was coming off the bus trying to get parts. So I had a lot of people to read against, but I didn't have to worry about having shitty parts written for me, about having almost no opportunity compared to, what I normally get to enjoy. So all I had to worry about was meeting my potential, because the opportunities were going to be there. He could meet his potential and have far fewer chances to have someone notice it. So he was right. Intellectually, I had to just acknowledge that. And that was 26 years ago, probably 25, 26 years ago. Things are better, but they're not where they could be. They're certainly not.
Not by a long shot.
Yeah.
Not by a long
So
shot.
the work continues, and being aware of it is important. And I did not go out of my way to marry a woman of color. I just happened to realize that's the best partner I could possibly find. I got to have her in my life. And I've invited this new perspective into my life that helps. It certainly does help. So,
sure.
Yeah.
Especially with good communication.
I try. I try. I don't always succeed, but the intention is there. She said, the one thing I like about you that allowed me to stay with you when I was wondering if you were going to be mature enough is, I said, you know what? Every day he's trying to be better. I can see that. He's trying to be better. He's working on it. So I'm going to give him a little time. Well,
that's being willing to be wrong. It's being willing to be curious. It's willing to not know stuff and grow.
Yeah.
If I'm fixed, I'm great. Everything's great the way I am. I have no interest in that.
Yeah.
What I hear your wife said was, you're a person who's willing to, keep progressing and keep being in process as a person. Mm-hmm. How could you not respect that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that must be what you have with your partner, because there's no way you would have a partner that doesn't value the amount of time you spend trying to be your best self. I mean, that must be mirrored in him to some degree.
I mean, I think in general, I connect best with people who are open to growing, who are interested in continuing to grow. And yeah, that's the same thing in partnership and in family and in friendship. I want that continued experience, and I connect best when that's available. Yeah, I think so.
There you have it. There's our recipe for joy, for happiness, and for meaning, for purpose, all of that. You've got to find things that make you feel enthusiastic, that make you interested in them. And they're out there, they're out there. That the world is vast. There's something out there for everyone to find, discover, and make it a part of their lives. It will activate so many wonderful things in you. So,
agreed.
Yeah. Well, Julie Nathanson, you are lovely and amazing as advertised. I'm so glad that we got to spend this time just catching up, chatting.
Just catching up. It was lovely.
Yeah,
Thank you
absolutely.
for inviting me to chat.